Howdy my totally tubular gamers, we're back with another video.
So I got another year-end video for you, and today I'm going to be talking about the best remakes, remasters, and general re-releases of games in 2024. Now, something that has become very common in the gaming industry is re-releasing older games. What's old is new again, whether it's just a simple port, maybe it's just a re-release to a newer console so that it's more widely available, maybe they upgrade the graphics or the resolution and it's a nice remaster, or it's a full-blown remake. Regardless of the reason, companies love re-releasing old shit and selling it to us at a premium price. I mean, how could they not love it? They don't really have to come up with anything new. All of the hard work's already been done for them. But I mean, could you blame them? Some of these games sell like gangbusters, and there's a lot of reasons why you'd want to re-release an older title or remake an older title. Maybe it's not accessible nowadays, maybe you want it to reach a newer audience, or you want to capture that nostalgia and resell it. Whatever the reason may be, there were plenty of great remasters and remakes that came out in 2024. And so with that, I'm going to be talking about the very best remakes and remasters that I played that came out in 2024. As always, I did not play every single title that released in 2024. I sure tried my hardest, but I did not play every single one. So let me know down below if I should have included something else, if I was missing something, whether you agree, disagree. Let's get a discussion going. What were some of the best remakes and remasters that came out this year? I do want to give an honorable mention to Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake. I just haven't gotten around to it. It certainly has been a busy year, and if you're somebody who's only looking for brand new, fresh experiences, well, this probably isn't the video for you, and I apologize. I also apologize that I probably sound sick as fuck right now and not in a cool way, and that's because I am very sick, but I can't afford to take a day off. I'm not working a 9 to 5. This is the crucial time for videos, so sorry you're gonna have to put up with sick sounding Jonathan. Hopefully this is the last video where I sound sick. Alright, please like, share, comment, subscribe. I got the Patreon and the super thanks. Any support is truly greatly appreciated. Seriously, I appreciate you all so very much, especially the patrons. Thank you all. I really do appreciate it. So, let's get to the games. So kicking things off, we have not only the first remaster that came out in 2024, but easily the remaster that I spent the most amount of time with, and that is the Apollo Justice trilogy. For the unfamiliar, this is the 4th, 5th, and 6th game in the Ace Attorney franchise, the visual novel series about the lawyers, and all of their crazy antics. I've made it no secret that 2024 is the year where I finally got into Ace Attorney, and one of the reasons I got so into this series was thanks to this collection. It's great to have these 3 games remastered for a modern console and PC. They were previously only on DS and 3DS, but now every single modern device has these games, and that can only be a good thing. The more people that could play this series, the better. These are all very interesting visual novels with a great sense of humor, drama, with some really enduring, engaging, likable characters, and great storylines. If you couldn't tell from the title, these 3 games mostly focus on Apollo Justice, who got introduced in the 4th game where you only play as Apollo. Then there's the 5th game, Dual Destinies, where you play as a few different characters, and then we have the 6th game, Spirit of Justice, which also has you playing as more than just Apollo, but he really is one of the central characters in these 3 games. I think that while he isn't as great or as unhinged as Phoenix, he still is a very likable main character, and I really like the arcs he goes through. And I would hope that I would like him in these stories, since they are visual novels. Like 95% of this game is story. It is dialogue. You are just looking at a character and reading text a majority of the time. Yes, there is some gameplay here. You do solve some basic puzzles, and there are some adventure game elements, but for the most part, it really is all about the story. If you're somebody who hates visual novels with a passion, you just cannot stand these games, then you're not going to like this series. But if you're someone who even kind of likes visual novels, I think you'll like the Ace Attorney series. I'm not huge on visual novels myself, but the Ace Attorney games, they really are something special. These are some of the best visual novels of all time. Would I prefer the original trilogy to the Apollo Justice trilogy? Yeah, I would, but these are still 3 really great visual novels, and they're all pretty long. Like, there's a reason this is one of my most played games overall in 2024. Each of these games are 20 to 30 hours, and sometimes even longer if you have autoplay on like I do half the time. But I found all 3 of these games pretty endearing. They also look a bit better than their original releases. They've touched up the graphics and the resolution. They look a little less crunchy and are a bit more smoothed out in a good way. Either way, I think this is a great collection. Alright, from a remaster and a resolution bump to a full-on remake, here we have the Silent Hill 2 remake, one of the most anticipated remakes probably of all time, and I'm so glad to say that the remake is actually really well done. While I was a bit suspicious of Bloober Team thanks to some of their past games, they absolutely knocked it out of the park with this one, and this is one of the best remakes of the entire year. I will just immediately say that the graphics are amazing in this game. This is a great looking game. The environments, the lighting, the character models, the facial expressions, it just looks incredible in this game. Like, this is a really good looking game. So yes, it looks quite a bit better than the original. I also think they nailed the gameplay for the most part. Silent Hill 2 never had, the very best survival horror gameplay, but I think that this is a pretty good recreation of Silent Hill 2's gameplay. The melee combat is significantly better, shooting from your gun feels nice, and exploring around Silent Hill, it's always going to be a good time. I will say this game adds several new areas and little gameplay sections to just about every single area, and while I'm not huge on these and I think it kind of messes with the pacing a little bit, it's not a deal breaker. But I do think it was a bit unnecessary in certain areas, like I don't need to spend even more time in the apartments at the beginning of the game. But at least the gameplay's good. Something that I was really worried that Bloober Team wasn't going to be able to recreate is the story, the world, and the vibe of Silent Hill 2. That's like the best aspect of the original game, and I think they did a pretty good job recreating it. I think it is just as good as the original games. They even got the subtlety down. I think that this is a perfectly fine way to play Silent Hill 2, and it's really great that there's a new way to actually experience the game, and it's available to a hell of a lot more people than that original game is, that's for sure. All in all, props to Bloober Team. They made one of the best remakes of the entire year, and I'd have no problem with them remaking the first or third game. I'd much rather see them remake the first game though. Alright, so up next is a very late entry into this list. It literally released as I was making this list, and that is the Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver 1 and 2 Remaster. Now, the Legacy of Kain series is a very old, just kind of forgotten franchise at this point. The last game came out over 20 years ago, and it really hasn't seen like any re-releases, but here we are. They've remastered Soul Reaver 1 and 2. And I gotta say, it's really great to see Legacy of Kain come back. I've always wanted to try these games, I've always had them forever, but it wasn't until this remaster when I finally sat down and played these, and I gotta say, these are actually pretty good, and these remasters are incredible. They look actually significantly better than the original games, and you can freely swap between the two Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary style, and it's really great to see just how much better these new versions look. They've also added a map, they've modernized the controls and camera a little bit. This is easily the best way to play these games, like full stop. And these are still great games. Sure, they have aged in several different aspects. The combat is slow, it's clunky, the camera, it still can be a bit of an issue, and the platforming, it's less than ideal at times, but these games still have so much going for them. The story is really great, the characters are really likable and interesting, the games just have a great atmosphere and vibe to them, like you can just feel the mood that they're going for. While these aren't full-blown remakes, this is the closest we're gonna get, and I'm just happy that this series has gotten any attention at all. And it's great that these games can be played on a modern system. I hope the other games get a similar treatment, and maybe we'll actually get a new Legacy of Kain. One certainly can hope, but as for Soul Reaver 1 and 2 Remastered, very good, very well done. So here we have not only one of the most unexpected remasters of the year, but maybe the best remaster of the entire year, and that is Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster. Now, I've made it no secret that I love the Dead Rising series, and I think the original game is a great game, but it certainly has aged in several different aspects, not just the presentation. In this game, it actually seeks to fix a lot of it while still keeping the magic of the original game. I will say, despite being a remaster, air quotes, this game looks significantly better than any of the other Dead Rising games. Like, this is a good looking game. All of the character models look good, the environments are nice, the frame rate's super solid. It's just a swell presentation through and through. I think the voice acting is pretty good in this game too. Sure, it is different from the original, and in certain areas it's not as good, but for the most part I think it's pretty good, and they even added voice lines to previously unvoiced NPCs like Otis. But when it comes to the gameplay, the most important aspect of this remaster, they absolutely nailed it. They captured the original Dead Rising 1's gameplay, but improved on it in several different aspects, modernized it a little bit, and really have created what is, in my opinion, the best Dead Rising experience possible. They really kept Dead Rising's DNA in here, taking all of the survivors back, the timer mechanic, shit breaking on you super easily, the psychos that can just wipe the floor with you. It's all here, but it's been improved. Yes, the game is quite a bit easier than the original, but it also makes you realize the original shouldn't have been as hard as it is. The AI are no longer dumb as rocks like the original, the controls aren't anywhere near as stiff or clunky as the original, and you can also move and shoot. Well, kind of. It's just a lot better. The game flows better, it feels better, it plays better, and then it still captures the magic and atmosphere of the original Dead Rising, with all of the original music returning, even the licensed stuff, and it feels just as campy and goofy while simultaneously serious as the original game did. I really love this remaster. I played it non-stop and nearly beat it in one sitting because, damn it, I love Dead Rising and this feels great. It's just so great to come back to Dead Rising and see it better than ever. If you're someone who likes Dead Rising at all or has ever even had a little interest in it, I think this remaster is absolutely the way to go. Alright, so here we got a Nintendo remake. We have Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door. It does not even feel real to say that. It is crazy that Nintendo actually remade everyone's favorite Paper Mario game. The Paper Mario game everybody wanted to see come back, it actually came back, and it's really great. I'll just immediately say that The Thousand-Year Door is not only my favorite Paper Mario game, it's arguably my favorite Mario RPG. So yes, I was very excited for this remake, and it did not disappoint. I think the first thing to bring up is the game's graphics. It's a good looking game. It looks quite a bit better than the original game, which still looks good even nowadays. This looks more like the modern Paper Mario games, and yeah, I really got no issues here. I know that the frame rate is halved, and I know that there is a good amount of people that really hate this and prefer the original just because it's 60 versus 30, and while I gotta say it is kind of lame that it's 30, I very quickly got used to it and didn't really have any issues with it. The graphics are easily the biggest change from the original Thousand-Year Door, and yeah, I really got nothing to complain about here. The game also has a remastered soundtrack, and while I think it's alright, I'm always going to prefer the original game's soundtrack. When it comes to the gameplay, it is pretty much unchanged from the original GameCube game. Yeah, there's a few tweaks here and there, some quote modern sensibilities, but this is Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door in its entirety, with everything you remember and love about it. The lovable, memorable characters, the awesome set pieces, how every chapter is really different from each other, the battle system is just as great as it's always been. It's all here. If you're somebody who never experienced the original game, this is a great way to experience Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door. And if you're somebody who's been a longtime fan of this game, I still think it's worth checking out for the new presentation alone. I will say though, if you're somebody who's played through this game like half a dozen times, yeah, it's really not going to feel all that different, but if you've played through it half a dozen times, you're clearly a big fan of the game anyway, so yeah, it really is just a great time, and I still can't believe that it actually got remade. And before somebody goes after me, yes, this is a remake. It was made from the ground up, but none of this changes the fact that Thousand-Year Door is awesome. Alright, so back at it with another remaster. Here we have Tomb Raider 1 through 3 remastered. Now I gotta say, despite playing well over 2,000 games, I'd actually never played any of the classic Tomb Raider games. Like, I always wanted to eventually get around to them, I just never did. But now, we got the remastered collection, and this is easily the best way to play these games. It's also the best looking way to play some of these classic Tomb Raider games. This is actually a pretty decent looking game, and you can switch between these new graphics and the original on the fly. And you get to see all of the nice changes and tweaks they made. They also made a few tweaks to the gameplay. They certainly modernized the controls a bit, and I know that some people prefer the original game's controls. Don't worry, you can switch between them. Don't worry, they're giving us options here. They made the saving a lot more modern. You can just save, anywhere. But really, outside of that, they kept the core Tomb Raider experience here, jank and all. You're still just kind of wandering around these environments, looking for items, doing plenty of stiff platforming. The combat, well, it's not the greatest, but a majority of the games really are exploration, and to a certain extent, pixel hunting, which is absolutely still here, but it's really great to see that these games have been re-released. Yes, they were re-released on the PS3, but it's great to be able to play these games on a modern console, and next year, Tomb Raider 4, 5, and 6 are getting a similar remaster treatment. Now you can play all of the classic Tomb Raider games on a modern console, even the shitty ones. How great is that? But seriously, I think it's pretty cool you can play nearly every Lara Croft game on a modern console, and this remaster collection was actually fairly priced. It was only $30, which is not something I can say for every remaster in this video. If you know, you know. So here we got a full-blown remake. We have Persona 3 Reload. Now the original Persona 3, I liked it. I thought it was a good to great game, but I had so many little issues with it that I just was never able to fall in love with it like I did with Persona 4 and 5, but Persona 3 Reload? Oh, I absolutely fell in love with this one. I actually really like this remake, and I think it is significantly better than the original game. While yes, it's not as challenging as the original game, I think all of the gameplay improvements really make up for it in spades. This game is basically Persona 3 remade with Persona 5's gameplay, and I mean that in the best of ways. Everything just flows a heck of a lot better, the game controls better, the dungeon crawling is way better than the original games, the battle mechanics are just significantly improved from the original game. Like, it all really comes together when it comes to the gameplay. In my opinion, this is the definitive Persona 3 experience by like a landslide. I could never go back to the original game with its dumbass uncontrollable AI, terrible dungeon crawling, slow pace, and stupid tired mechanic. No. All of that is gone here, and what we have is a great RPG. And then to top it all off, we have a fantastic presentation. This game looks so good. Like, it really looks great. The menus look incredible, the character models are excellent, everything is so stylized. I could be here all day talking about this game's presentation. The music has also been redone, and it's so good. It's arguably better than the originals. It really is that good. I thoroughly enjoyed Persona 3 Reload. It was one of my favorite remakes of the entire year. If you're somebody who liked the original, or if you're somebody who hated the original, I think you could actually really get into Reload because it's just so much better. Like, you will never catch me going back to the original game again. The soundtrack, sure, but the actual game, no, not even close. Okay, so here's a remaster you probably didn't expect to see on here. We have the Plumbers Don't Wear Ties remaster. Now, Plumbers Don't Wear Ties is a very infamous, horrible game from the 90s that barely even counts as a game. It's really just a series of pictures thrown together with some very basic interaction. There's about as much interaction with this game as there is when you boot up Netflix. It's all about the story and writing and characters, and all of that is just, well, it's just awful. It's absolutely terrible, with some of the worst acting you'll ever find in a video game, one of the stupidest stories of any video game, and all of this leads to it being considered one of the worst video games of all time. And then it got a remaster. Yes, Limited Run Games swooped in and remastered the game, and you know what? This is a pretty good remaster. This is absolutely one of those games that are just so unbelievably terrible that it actually becomes good. It does a full 180, and I found it very entertaining. Good? No, absolutely not. But I tell you, I certainly had a good time while I was playing this game. They even threw in this bonus extra mode where it's in like first person and you walk around in a maze collecting things. There's a bunch of behind the scenes content. There's interviews with the cast. It's all really great stuff. If you're somebody who ever had any interest in this game, it might be worth picking up this remaster. I know there was a bit of controversy with it and limited run games in general, but when speaking on the remaster itself and the game, and I think they did a really great job. Like, they put a lot of care and detail into this remaster, more so than it honestly deserves. And I wish that every remaster got this level of love and attention, because it really is remarkable that such a shitty fucking game got a pretty good remaster. Alright, so here we got another Capcom re-release, noticing a trend here, and it's Monster Hunter Stories Remastered. For the unfamiliar, Monster Hunter Stories was a spin-off in the Monster Hunter series. It's a turn-based JRPG that was released for the 3DS. And according to Capcom themselves, they decided to re-release the game on modern consoles since you could no longer buy it on the eShop. And I gotta say, this is a pretty good remaster, and I'm glad it's available on modern systems. I had never tried the original. I didn't really ever plan on trying the original. It was only on 3DS, and the second one seemed a lot better, but now I've been able to sit down and actually play this, and yeah, I think it's a decent little JRPG. I'm not going to act like it's amazing or, anywhere near as good as the mainline Monster Hunter games, but I still found it pretty decent. The game also looks quite a bit better than the original game, with a much higher resolution and smoothed out textures, characters, etc. This is a decent looking game, but yeah, it absolutely does look like a 3DS game. And at the very least, to my understanding, all of the gameplay from the original is completely left intact here, and yeah, it's a good little JRPG. It does take a bit of time to get going, the pacing is kind of slow, and I wish I put more time into it than I had, but they also re-released the second game for PS4, which had only ever been on Switch and PC, and yeah, I think the second game is quite a bit better, but I still think it is cool that they actually, re-released and gave a shit about the 3DS game. I hope they re-release all of their 3DS games. I mean, they did with Ace Attorney, they have with Monster Hunter Stories, they did with Resident Evil Revelations. Is there even any 3DS games left for them to remaster? If there is, they should remaster them. So here's a remaster that really flew under the radar, and that is Sam & Max The Devil's Playhouse Remaster. Now, Sam & Max is a long-running series of point-and-click adventure games and this was the third game by the now defunct Telltale Games, or at least the original Telltale Games, but a dedicated group of individuals known as Tsukape Games have been remastering and re-releasing the older Sam & Max titles. They remastered the first 2 seasons, and here we have the Devil's Playhouse remastered. Not only is the game available on modern consoles now, but they actually did update the graphics and fix the lighting from the original game. It might be easy to forget, but the original Devil's Playhouse had some really terrible lighting and actually had a lot of graphical issues, but all of that has been addressed in this remaster, and it is a much better looking game. They also updated the art style and made it more in line with the previous 2 remasters, where it looks kind of comic book style, a bit cel shady. And yeah, I absolutely think this is the way to go for Sam & Max's art style. Outside of that though, the game really is untouched from the original. The story, the writing, the dialogue, the characters, and general gameplay is pretty much identical to the original game, and I thought it was fantastic in the original game. This game is quite a bit more serious than the first 2 seasons, but it also has a really engaging story. Like, this game goes to some dark, crazy, weird places, and it was great to experience that all over again. This game is also hilarious. There are so many great jokes. I was busting up laughing several times. Like, I played this game as a teenager and I thought it was funny then, but now as an adult, oh, I think this shit is hilarious. If you like adventure games or point and click games and you never tried this, I absolutely think it's worth trying. And I'll always be rooting for Sam & Max. I want to see them succeed, and hopefully this remaster did okay. So here was another highly anticipated remaster, and it is Sonic X Shadow Generations. Now, Sonic Generations, it really is like peak 3D Sonic. It is the best the boost formula has ever been, and I still think it's a great game, and this remaster, it's really well done. But people weren't all that excited for that. They were excited for the Shadow Generations side of things, where it actually is brand new. And I gotta say, Shadow Generations, oh, this is so good. It is so fantastic. Like, the controls are great, the levels are great, the story, I really enjoyed the story. There's a ton of fan service. Sonic X Shadow Generations is worth getting alone for Shadow Generations. It really is that good, especially if you're a longtime Sonic fan. Like, yes, Sonic Generations is still a wonderful game. It still is a ton of fun. You get to move really fast. There's some excellent levels, and the soundtrack is still killer. But Shadow Generations, oh, this really was the shit. I love this through and through. I beat it in like one sitting, and I was smiling ear to ear pretty much the entire time. I know this video is just talking about remasters and remakes, but I would be damned if I didn't bring up how incredible Shadow Generations is. If you've ever been a fan of Sonic, or especially Shadow, I absolutely think it is worth checking out. Go out of your way, check out Shadow Generations, you won't be disappointed. Alright, I can't believe I'm saying this, but here we have the Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection. After so many years of people wanting the Marvel vs. Capcom games back, Capcom actually gave it to us. They actually remastered the king of fighting games. MVC2 is back, baby. Marvel's back, and it's just as great as ever. It might be better than ever, with fantastic online, all these special and bonus features, and then the gameplay is just as good as it's always been. It's completely intact here, and it still is so much fun, but it gets better than that. It's not just MVC2. They could have just re-released MVC2 and people would have been really happy, but no, they went out of their way and they remastered a ton of the Marvel fighting games from years past. This is a pretty solid collection. They have arcade perfect ports of X-Men Children of the Atom, Marvel Superheroes, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter, MVC1, and then re-releasing for the very first time the Punisher arcade game with online co-op. And it's all just as great as it sounds. This is like low-key the greatest re-release in fighting game history. I don't know how any other collection could ever stand up to this. All of these games are great. They all got rollback. You can use a bunch of different controllers and peripherals. They're all available on modern consoles. Like, this is nothing short of spectacular. I really never even thought we would get an MVC2 re-release at this point. I mean, free MVC2 was around for so long and Capcom just kind of ignored it, but no. They actually listened to us, they gave us MVC2, and even more. All I can say is, if you've ever had any interest in any of these fighting games, go out of your way and get this shit. Who knows when it's going to get delisted. MVC2 was delisted for over 10 years, and I have a feeling it's going to happen to this at some point as well. So just make sure you got it saved in your library, or better yet, get it physically. They can't break into your house and steal it. Okay, they can, but hopefully that's not going to happen. Either way, check out the MVC Fighting Collection. It really is hella good. So here's another Nintendo remake, and it's probably a remake you forgot even came out this year. It is the Mario vs. Donkey Kong remake. Yeah, did you forget that Mario vs. Donkey Kong was actually remade this year? I did too. But that's okay, it's still on the list here, and I think this is actually a pretty good remake. The original Mario vs. Donkey Kong for the Game Boy Advance is still a pretty good game. I think it's one of the more underrated Mario games. And funny enough, it would actually end up being very different from the rest of the Mario vs. Donkey Kong series, but I always thought this was the best of the Mario vs. Donkey Kong games. I mean, the minis had some good games, but this original one was always my favorite. It's actually pretty different from most Mario games. It's a much slower puzzle platformer where it's all about getting these keys and getting through the obstacle courses. And it can actually get very challenging, especially if you do any of the extra stages or you go for 100%, which the game absolutely recommends that you do. And this remake keeps all of that original game intact. It still has the somewhat challenging, slower paced gameplay. It looks a hell of a lot better than the original, and all of the music has been redone, and yeah, I much prefer this new soundtrack to the original. This game actually has some real bangers when it comes to the soundtrack, but when it comes to the moment-to-moment gameplay, it really is untouched for the most part. Yeah, the controls have been tweaked a little, it feels a little smoother, they've added some extra levels here and there, but it really is just that original experience, but even better. Oh, and they did get rid of the points, but I never really cared about that anyway. Overall, if you've ever been interested in this series at all, then I think this remake is worth checking out. I'm not going to act like this is one of the very best games I've played this year, or even one of the best Mario games, but it was still an enjoyable time. So our next game is not one that I'm totally sure I should include on a list like this, but I have Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Yeah, it pretty much is a brand new game, but it still has Final Fantasy VII in its DNA at the end of the day. Yeah, the gameplay is completely different, the story's a bit different, the game looks significantly better and different from the original, but it still does play off elements of the original Final Fantasy VII to the point that yeah, I included it on a list like this. I'm not going to really talk about this game much more since I've already talked about it a bunch, but if you don't know already, it's a massive, fantastic video game that I absolutely think is worth checking out. So to finish things off, we have Ace Attorney Investigations Collection. Yep, I thought I would start with an Ace Attorney game, and I'm going to end with an Ace Attorney game. There was actually 2 Ace Attorney collections that came out this year by Capcom, and I gotta say, while I thought the Apollo Justice collection was pretty good, Investigations, oh, it's really good. So this collection includes Ace Attorney Investigations 1 and 2. The thing is though, the second game had never officially released here in the West. It was only ever in Japan. So this is technically a new release, and I gotta say, it's pretty incredible. Investigations 2 is maybe the best game in the entire Ace Attorney series. It's really well done. The first Investigations is pretty good also, but it doesn't have anything on Investigations 2. Every single case, every single character, all of the interactions, it's all memorable, funny, dramatic, it's all really great stuff. The game has some fantastic plot twists, and the ending, oh, it really was something special. And when it comes to this re-release, oh, it is top tier. It is so good. They have basically remade both of these games. Yeah, you can have the original look if you want, but I really like how the games look now. The music is excellent. The interfaces and controls have been tweaked since these were both DS games, and this is clearly the definitive way to play both of these games. I doubt anybody's ever going to go back to the DS games when there's this new modern re-release that's on all available consoles, and it's actually incredibly well done. And I very much recommend this collection, really just for the second game alone. The second game might very well be the best visual novel game I have ever played, but there's actually a lot more to it than just visual novel. In the investigations games, you actually get to walk around like a point-and-click adventure game. You get to do prosecutor investigations since you actually play as Miles Edgeworth and not Phoenix Wright, and I gotta say, I really enjoyed this gameplay. I love the story, the characters, the presentation, the soundtrack's excellent, it's just a great game. I could be here all day talking about how much I loved Investigations 2, but to be honest, my throat is really getting to me. I'm sounding sicker and sicker by the minute, so we're going to end things here. The code word for today is going to be Dayquil. I think last time it was NyQuil, now it's Dayquil, so hope you all have a wonderful day. Stay safe, y'all. Get some rest. See y'all later. Bye-bye.